that if he by about 20 after, it'd be good.
Good.
So you have plenty of time before that.
Hi, Charlie.
Hey, Don. Tried to check in with you today, but you were in a meeting.
Yeah, well, you know, the strange thing is when you go on vacation, people actually want to talk to you afterwards. So I haven't had a lot of time to breathe.
I gathered that. Glad you're here. Well, I think it's time we can start our meeting. So welcome to the 100th anniversary club, the 31st of March, 2021 meeting. And we're going to hear from our mayor in just a short while. Mesa's non-discrimination ordinance will be the topic, and he's going to teach us a little or educate us a little about that. So the mayor was recently ranked, well, the city was ranked among the top 20 best run cities in the country. And that is under the leadership of our mayor, John Giles. So Mayor Giles is passionate about Mesa and moving forward. We felt there was no one better to ask than him to speak to us today about the recently passed non-discrimination ordinance and how it'll impact the city of Mesa. So he'll be here in a short while, and we're going to move forward with our meeting. So Don Wild is going to lead the Pledge of Allegiance. Alan Barnes will offer a prayer, and Val Wilson is our Sergeant at Arms. So I don't think Alan is in the room, so I'm going to ask Dill if he'll offer a prayer.
I'm here.
Okay, Dill. But at first, we're going to have Don Wild unmute his microphone and lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Don?
All right. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hello.
And Dill, if you'll unmute your mic, you can lead us in the prayer.
There's someone there.
Yeah, I thought Alan was already there.
Yep. I am here, Ben, if you want
Go
me
ahead,
to.
Alan, pray.
Go for it. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Our Father in heaven, we're thankful for this day. We're grateful for this opportunity to meet together as friends and those in the community here. We're grateful for the opportunities that was given to us already to serve and love and uplift one another. And we pray that we might have our minds and our hearts open to recognize those in need and have the means and ability to reach out to support them. We pray that we might be able to help everyone in the community come closer together, that we might be better prepared to love and serve each other. And we say these things in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you for that invocation, Alan. We are glad you're here. So today we have a few guests in the room. Alex Cruz. Alex Cruz is a pending member of our club. And in the next few weeks, we expect to do an induction ceremony. And Alex, as well as Karen, will join us as Mesa Rotarians. Now, as far as the club, updates for the club news. New member orientation is on the 2nd of April. I know I've repeated this a few times now, but you don't have to be a brand new member of this club to attend. And I believe most of us would gather some new information or insights by attending. It's a 1-hour program at 11:30. But I encourage everyone to consider it if you're a new member within the last couple of years in our club. So next, the Rotary District 5495 has a week of service where across the state of Arizona, Rotarians are going to be focused on projects. And there's an emphasis to get that into the news and to share that with the communities that we're in. So in Mesa, for example, the Mesa mayor next week will issue a proclamation recognizing that. And I, along with a couple other Rotarians from other clubs, will join the mayor for that. And we'll bring back the information and photos from that to our club. That'll be used to mark the start of the 1 week of service. Carol, will you unmute your microphone and tell us about the details that you know so far?
So we have 2 events planned for the week of service. The first one is a local food drive. And this is more as Rotarians to invite your neighbors, your friends, and we're calling this basically a peanut butter and jelly drive with United Food Bank. They are looking for peanut butter and jelly because they always have a need for that, and canned meat like canned tuna or canned chicken. And the purpose of this is to help those who need food, obviously, and as well, if I know who wants to participate, I'll give you a box or 2, and it's just basically ask your neighbors, your friends, if they would donate any boxes, or excuse me, any food, peanut butter or jelly or canned meat of some sort, and also at the same time introduce them to Rotary just to kind of as a nice thing. So, and I'll collect all the boxes. So if you're interested in participating, I'll send out an email, but if you want to just send something in the chat, say, hey, I want to participate. I'm going to give a box at my office and collect food there. The second item, and Charlie, who's our outdoor aficionado, since Earth Day is, he wanted us to do something that helped with the environment, and we're not planting trees or something of that nature, but Salt River always needs help with picking up trash. So we'll probably have something for the 24th of April, which is a Saturday, pick up trash. And we'll have more details as to where we'll meet up, and we can invite Rotaract or Interact to join us as well.
Hey, Carol, on your food drive, could we send a check instead of a box?
Yes, sir. Yes. And greatly appreciate it. And I can come around and pick up checks. So if that works, or we can mail it into, I'll find out if we just mail it into Rich, or I can pick up either way.
Just wondered if you wanted cash instead of food.
Either way it will work. Cash buys food. And it's really nice to have food that's not.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Okay, thanks to your help, Carol, you've gotten us started on that. The best thing we can do as a club is for all of us that are able to participate. And we have a couple projects, and Carol will define it a little further as we get closer, but we're off and running on that. And thank you, Carol, for getting it going way in advance. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
I just wanted to tell the club about our effort to create a little press release. And we've been fortunate to connect with a student intern from Mesa Public Schools. Her name is Amanda Adams. And our goal is to create a little press release or news update about our club and do it every month. She's working on it, and this is our very first project. It just highlights the Dignity Healthcare event that Carol and Craig put together. And we're going to try to post this and make this available wherever we can, so more folks in our community hopefully will know what we do in Mesa Rotary, and maybe some will be interested in joining us. So we'll all receive one of these updates probably in an email soon, but we're working out a few typos before we send it to everybody in the club. I want to ask Joe O'Reilly also, if you'll take a couple minutes and tell everyone what your plan is in regard to membership. Joe, would you take the mic?
Sure. What we want everyone to do is invite one person to one of our virtual meetings just to get a taste of Rotary, just to experience Rotary. And that does two things. One is it lets more people in the community know about our club and what we're doing, especially that we've been here for 100 years, and it may attract some new members. So you'll be getting an email through Rich with a text you could use to invite someone with some information about past meetings, what we've had, what's coming up in future meetings. And if you can invite someone to come, that would be great. You don't have to ask them to join. We'll do a follow-up email giving them some information about the club and telling them how they can join if they'd like to. But I'm just asking all of you just to have someone who you think might appreciate Rotary, should know about Rotary, or might even be a potential member to come to one of our meetings, log in remotely. It doesn't take a big commitment as compared to driving down to the Hilton and spending a couple of hours. So you'll get an email today asking you to do that. So I'll turn it back to you, Ben.
Thanks, Joe. And it's a super idea. And I hope you get a good response, and we'll work at it. We'll keep it going.
Hey, and I'm Sergeant at Arms, and I'll let Sergeant at Arms know who's responded and who hasn't. So who knows what the consequences will be.
Well put. Well, okay. So with that information, we're getting close to the Sergeant at Arms, and Val Wilson's been warming up in the background. So I'm going to hand the mic to Val. And Val, when you conclude, will you hand the microphone to Joe Wilson, because she's going to introduce the mayor.
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
How generous do you feel today? We did so poorly last week that we need to have a little boost this week. All the ho-ho cams are back. Is that right? There's no game today?
There's no game for the rest of the year.
Yeah. Well, tell us how the ho-ho cam event went this year.
I was going to bring that up. I think we're very, very successful. Most of the two stadiums were either 20, 25%.
You're getting a lot of static, Steve.
What's that?
You're getting a lot of static. It's hard to hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you not hear me?
Must be your microphone.
That's interesting. All right. Well, never mind. I'll come on later.
Any other hoes that can talk about it with a better mic? There you go. So anybody do any traveling? I think I heard Don say he'd been someplace.
Yeah, so I got to take my family to Maui, and we had a fantastic time. There's not a lot of people comparatively on the islands right now, and I will tell you this, I have an amazing story about swimming with a sea turtle. So again, I think that Ben is still on the hook to go to lunch with me. And so again, same offer stands. If you want to go to lunch and hear the turtle story, you're more than welcome to. In the meantime, I think Maui's worth about 100 to my Paul Harris. So we'll send it that way.
Great. Anybody else take a spring break trip with their kids or grandkids? How about great grandkids? Any new cars, new wives, new, the usual? With this great enthusiasm, anybody know Frank Marinowski? Dilworth, you must remember Frank.
I do.
Yeah. What are your recollections of Frank? He died in 2002, I believe.
He was a mind reader.
Did you ever listen to his programs?
I sold him a pair of shoes once at Hanny's.
Were they matching?
Yes.
Frank was an interesting fellow. He was on a radio program, I think it was KTAR, at 10 o'clock at night on Saturdays and Sundays. And he would regress people. He actually was kind of a therapist as well as a college professor. He would regress people to find out what they were in their first or second life or a previous life. And some of his stories were just mind-boggling, particularly the one that he regressed a person that had been, I think, on the Arizona when it was in Pearl Harbor, and the person that was talking to Frank had died in his first life as a sailor on the Arizona, and he came back, and he really didn't realize that until he was regressed, and they went through all the details of his first existence. It's fascinating stuff. Anybody else remember Frank or stories from Frank? Or have any karma stories? Well, in lieu of the tremendous response, I'll give $1,000 to Paul Harris for my grandson. And the genesis of that is that my second book is out. It's on Amazon, called Boney Baloney. And you might expect it to be a very serious book about baloney, but it really isn't. It's not even about bones so much, but it's something you might enjoy. If you read my first book, you might see some of the similarities on the second book. So the mayor's not here, is he?
He is
Mayor
here.
is here.
Yeah, he's
Oh,
here.
good. All right, well, then we can kill this goose and get on with the mayor. So thank you very much.
Okay, and I was going to say, Val, we may have to schedule you for a program to tell us about your book sometime.
I'd be fine.
It's my pleasure today to introduce our mayor. I think most of you know him. So I thought I would share with you some of the facts that I know about him, whether they're true or not. Mayor, you can dispute the facts. But anyway, first of all, he's a Mesa boy, graduated from Westwood High School. I'm not sure of the age, but I probably was teaching there when he did. That's how old I am. He has his favorite, if you have been around here long enough, you are people that it's Charles or Mata. Unfortunately, he was a Charles because I'm a Mata person, but
I was a Mata's person, Joe.
Oh, were you? I thought you
Yeah.
were Charles. I'm sorry. See, I got that one wrong. He can address that. He is passionate about his old truck, and you see his truck in a lot of his advertisements or in the parades or whatever. And he was Mace's Man of the Year, not Man of the Woman, several years ago. And the best part of him is his beautiful wife, Dawn, who is very involved in our community. And I think, did I count right? There are 8 grandchildren and 5 children. And I know he's very passionate about his family. So I invited him today because I've had some questions from people who thought I knew the answer and I didn't. It's what does the non-discrimination ordinance involved? And so one of the things we like to do as a program is to share information. And so today, that was the purpose, inviting him here today to tell us about the recently passed non-discriminating ordinance. So Mayor Giles, it's all yours.
Well, thank you very much, Joe. I appreciate the invitation, and it was fun to hear about Val's new book. It dawned on me that if I ever do end up writing a book, I think it's almost certain that the word baloney will be somewhere in the title, Val. So I hope I don't you don't have a serious copyright on the title, because I might want to borrow it from you. I note that there's, I mean, we all know each other on this call, right? I mean, as I look at the faces, most of you are people that I've known for decades, and you know me, and I see people like Dennis Kavanaugh and Jen Duff, and who could speak on this topic better than I could. But I'm willing to give it a shot, and anxious to respond to any questions you have. I mean, I'll give you a little overview. I'll give you a little monologue, but again, I'd rather spend time talking about the issues that you think are relevant pertaining to the non-discrimination ordinance. To give you just a little introduction, as many of you know, this is a topic that has been on our plate for many years. It's when I came on the scene as the mayor back in 2014, it was after our Human Relations Advisory Board had already petitioned the City Council to take action on this topic. The more detailed history on that than I can. And so we took up the topic, and we worked on it pretty diligently. And our city attorney at the time, Debbie Spinner, had volumes and volumes of 3-ring binders researching what the best practices were on non-discrimination ordinances around the country. And I think we did a very good effort at that time to bring this issue forward back in 2015 and 16, 17. You may recall back then, if you turned on CNN, there were, this was the topic of the day. This was what nearly a lot of cities in the United States were being boycotted because they had non-discrimination ordinances, and a lot were being boycotted because they didn't. And it was really kind of a somewhat controversial topic. And so we ultimately back then came to the conclusion that we needed to give this issue some more time to develop, and so that we could learn from the experiences of other communities. There were still some unresolved questions having to do with what happens when individual religious freedoms perhaps are viewed as being in conflict with these ordinances, and how businesses are impacted, and how facilities are impacted. And, it just, we decided rather than being on the cutting edge of this, we would watch and learn how other communities dealt with it. And over that time, there has been a lot of experience on the part of other communities. Right now, there's 20 states that have statewide non-discrimination laws, in addition to 320 cities, not in those 20 states. Locally, or in Arizona, there are, prior to Mesa, there were 6 cities that had non-discrimination ordinances, including the 2 cities larger than us, Tucson and Phoenix, in addition to Tempe and Flagstaff and Prescott. I'm sorry, not Prescott, Sedona, Winslow. I'm missing 1 or 2 others, but clearly in the Valley, a couple of million people have been living with a non-discrimination ordinance for several years. And so and then there's also been a lot of evolution on the legal front. There's been both United States Supreme Court cases and Arizona State Supreme Court cases that have interpreted these ordinances, and a lot of the unanswered questions, a lot of the ambiguities, a lot of the things that we were wondering how they get resolved, 5, 6, 7 years ago, those questions have been answered now. And they've been answered in ways that, for me, give a lot of confidence that we can go forward with this type of a law in Mesa and understand what the consequences are, understand what it is, and understand what it isn't. So just to give you that, having set that context a little bit, the ordinance that we have in Mesa is a very moderate non-discrimination ordinance. But it's also very legitimate. It covers the 3 topics that non-discrimination ordinances typically apply to, and that's housing and employment and public accommodation. In the areas of housing and employment, frankly, this ordinance does little or nothing to establish additional restrictions on individuals or businesses or landlords, because the federal rules in those areas are already so evolved that our ordinance really doesn't have much to add to that. The area of public accommodation is probably where you see the most significance. I mentioned to you earlier that there was an Arizona Supreme Court case recently that addressed this topic. You may have read about it. It was about 1.5 to 2 years ago, called Brush and Nip, called some wedding invitation calligraphers that challenged the Phoenix Arizona Supreme Court, set some boundaries as to what extent city non-discrimination ordinances need to be respectful of closely held religious beliefs and creative abilities of people that feel like that this type of an ordinance might be in conflict with that. So that question has been resolved in Arizona. So again, in that context, we felt like we could go forward. So this ordinance has some pretty large exclusions. It excludes churches. It excludes, faith-based public service, public charitable organizations. So a lot of the hypotheticals that sometimes people would like to use to attack this ordinance about faith-based domestic violence shelters or things like that, those organizations are excluded and not subject to this ordinance. This ordinance also excludes schools. we have, as a city, have always been very respectful of the fact that we have other elected bodies within our political boundaries that we need to be respectful of. And so school board members are elected to set policies on schools, and we respect that, and this ordinance is deferential to them. So when it comes to school facilities, school athletic programs, school locker rooms, all of those things are not under the purview of this ordinance. Also, there's a small business exclusion in this ordinance. So we, again, are sensitive to the fact that we're in a pandemic and small businesses are under some pressure, and we don't want to add additional regulations or expense to them, even though this ordinance does not require any physical changes to any businesses, bathrooms, or any other facilities. But if you're a business with 5 or fewer employees, you're exempt from this ordinance as well. So having set the stage with all the things this ordinance doesn't do, why would we feel the need to go forward? I can tell you that this ordinance is very significant, this is extremely powerful and meaningful to many people in our community that their whole lives have felt marginalized and have felt outside of our society. The reason for doing this ordinance is because it's the right thing to do from a moral perspective, but I can also tell you from an economic perspective, there's also significant benefits as well. Mesa, as you know, is one of the largest cities in the United States now, and our economy and our business environment is something that we compete on a national and a global level for companies. The best companies in the world, are being attracted to Mesa, Arizona, and we're competing for some of the biggest and best events as well. And more, this is one of the threshold questions that gets asked when we're having those conversations. Will people, when they come to Mesa, Arizona, be protected, and will they feel welcomed? We need to be able to, without any hesitation, answer those questions in an affirmative way. This ordinance allows us to do that. So I'm sorry, that's my little monologue. Like I said, I'm anxious to hear from you, hear what you're hearing, hear what your concerns might be. If you have questions or doubts, please share them with us. There are people of good faith, that have questions and doubts about this ordinance, and I've appreciated the opportunity to talk with them about it, and for the most part, when we have that conversation, they feel good about it at the end of the conversation. But having said that, would anyone like to ask a question?
Mayor, I believe there is a question in the chat from Jan. Jan, do you want to address it directly, or do you want me to read it?
Yes, I can read it. Hello, Mayor Giles. How are you?
Good, Jan. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. I'll just read the question that I have submitted. Can you please clarify that the Mesa ordinance allows biological men identifying as women to enter a public restroom or changing room, that means gym or recreational facility, and remove their clothing while in the presence of biological women and girls? Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Jan. This is the question that gets asked most frequently. And first of all, let me say that there's nothing in this ordinance that we understand the importance of expectations of privacy. And I think that is, and there's nothing in this ordinance that would create a situation where someone's privacy, particularly in the setting of a restroom or a changing room or a locker room, would need to be brought into question. But to answer your question directly, included in the protected classes of this ordinance would include transgender individuals, LGBTQ people. We don't eliminate the T from LGBTQ. And I got to tell you right now, there are many transgender people in our community that are already using, when they're in public and they need to go to the restroom, they typically will go to the restroom that they identify with. It would be a pretty provocative event if we had, someone who was dressed as a female walk into a male bathroom. My experience with the transgender community is they do not want to provoke any type of confrontation. The issues of privacy are even more important in that community than they are in other communities. Certainly, now we're again concerned about privacy. We're concerned about mischief in settings, including restrooms. And I can tell you that anyone who goes into a restroom for purposes of voyeurism or sexual harassment or anything untoward, those things are illegal. They were before this ordinance, and they very much so are so after this ordinance. But yes, transgender people are allowed to, per this ordinance, to use facilities that they identify with. But people who own and operate facilities and single-sex facilities, including restrooms and changing rooms and locker rooms, can adopt policies to protect expectations of privacy. Nudity, semi-nudity, anything that might be construed as being threatening to any individual, those situations can be regulated in a way that expectations of privacy aren't going to be compromised. And I can also tell you that again, this hypothetical is brought up around the country, and in the literally hundreds of cities and states that 20 states that have these policies in place. This scenario has not proven to be a problem. Again, transgender people are very much concerned about their privacy. As a class of people, they are not intimidators or people that provoke these types of situations.
Mayor, can I?
But thank you for the question.
Mayor, can I ask a kind of a hypothetical in relationship to that, if I understand correctly in this? If I were in, let's say, a gym and in the women's dressing room and getting ready or cleaning up, whatever, and a transgender came in who was of originally male orientation, but identified as a female and physically undressed themselves totally, thus exposing themselves to me, a female, from what would appear to be a male. Is that something that is illegal or open to issues of, or would that be acceptable under this?
I can tell you right now, public nudity is something that's hard for our city courts to prosecute. I mean, if you have someone who is exposing themselves in other situations, you can talk to our city prosecutor's office, and that's a problematic setting for us to arrest people and to prosecute them in. So this is more and more. I think what we're finding is that nudity in locker rooms and restrooms, it's just not typically appropriate. And it can be people can change clothes, they can even shower in ways that doesn't violate privacy expectations of the other patrons in those facilities. But there is nothing in this ordinance like a smart locker room operator, I think, even before this ordinance, should have in place policies that discourage nudity or discourage situations that some people would be uncomfortable with and find threatening. I can tell you that I'm a regular user of the city's locker rooms at the swimming pools. I sometimes in the middle of the day, I'll go, taking a master's swim class or something like that. And I can rinse the chlorine off, with my swimming suit on. I can put a towel over my waist and get in and out of a swimming suit standing on the deck, at a Keno, and no one's the wiser. I mean, so there's responsible ways to conduct your daily life, without confronting people and without making them uncomfortable. And all of those realities and all of those policies are very consistent with this ordinance.
Thank you for answering that. Okay, open up to other questions. Anybody else? Questions? I would ask this question then: what are the standards for enforcement of the ordinance, and what do you anticipate will be the challenges there?
Thank you, Joe. I really appreciate that question, because that seems to be an area that we're there's a lot of kind of conspiracy theories out there. People are, and one of the chief reasons some people are arguing against this is because we've designated the city attorney, prosecutor, and the judge, and you know, there's stiff fines that are associated with this. And so let me walk you through that. The enforcement attitude behind this ordinance is not to be punitive. It's to be educational. It's to avoid issuing citations at all costs, frankly. In the several cities that have had these ordinances, Tucson, Phoenix, Tempe, for several years, there have been 0 citations issued. And that's because the intent is that if someone does make a complaint, there's mediation involved, there's problem solving involved, there's conversations that are had. And again, the goal is not to issue any citations. And in fact, the Mesa ordinance mandates that you go through mediation and conflict resolution, before this would ever get into a civil hearing, where a judge might determine that someone needs to be sanctioned. So if our experience is anything like our surrounding communities, this ordinance will be on our book, and there will be 0 enforcement action that will happen in the average year. Now, there are, so again, the enforcement mechanism is that we've elevated this to the city manager is the one who would issue the citation. And that's because we want to be extremely careful and thoughtful, in the way that this ordinance is enforced. It's not some sort of code enforcement person who's out driving the streets, looking for, with a quota to issue citations or anything like that. So if a complaint comes into the city, again, every effort will be made at mediation, at education. Nearly every complaint that comes in will be resolved at that level before a citation is ever issued. But if there's someone who is extremely, aggressive in their behavior and insistent that they want to, have a hearing or push the issue, then yes, it could ultimately end up just like any other type of civil violation. Letting your weeds grow too high, or anything else in the city that occasionally people get cited for. It might end up in city court in a civil sanction hearing, and all of the same court rules apply in that situation that apply in any other situation. But again, and there are some penalties. The first violation, again, after some sort of mediation proves unsuccessful, would be ultimately a $350 fine. Now, there aren't a lot of lawyers, out there that are going to bring actions, or the city certainly isn't making any money if we collect a $350 fine, at the end of a long, detailed enforcement action. So there's no financial motive on the part of the city or anyone else to see these citations result in a hearing. Anyway, I hope that if that. I don't know if that adequately addressed the question or not.
Yeah. Also tell us about when it goes into effect.
120 days from the date that it was adopted, which was the 1st of March. And again, that's an extra long period of time. Typically it's 60 or 90 days, but we wanted to allow additional time for education for the business community, and for, situations like this where we could go out and answer questions and hopefully respond to rumors or hypotheticals that might be kicking around. So 120 days. Now, I think you're aware that there's the potential for a referendum on this ordinance, and if that happens, the referendum folks have another couple of days to file their signatures, and if they're successful in doing that, then the ordinance would be stayed, it'd be put on hold until after there's an election. So this will be effective 120 days from the 1st of March. In the event there's not a referendum, if there is a referendum, it would be stayed until after the election.
So I've got a question for you, John, as a follow-up of what Val said. if, what's the Mesa Police Department going to do when they pick up a guy who says he's a woman and they got to put him in a cell? You're going to put him in the men's section or in the women's section, or vice versa? You got a woman that says she's a man. You're going to put her in with all the men or with the women? That's the
a great
first time the
question.
city's going to have to challenge that or face that.
Yeah. I suspect we will. The answer is I don't know. We'd have to ask our court, but I suspect that they'll go to the facility that they identify with. It would probably be more, frankly, provocative to put someone who is presenting as a woman in a men's facility rather than vice versa. So I think we'd leave that up to probably the county jail. That's a question that is not a hypothetical. That's happening every day in Maricopa County. So we're not. I'm sure we figured out how to deal with that, and I would guess that they go where they identify.
I know. That's why I asked the question. It's something that they got to face right now in 120 days.
Well, it's something they've been dealing with for years, and so it's not a new question. Transgender people have been with us for a long time, and this doesn't impact the police department's policies. But I would guess that we do have a small holding facility at the city of Mesa. I'm not sure how much of that is shared space, so I'm not sure that there's gender specific jail space in the Mesa City holding facility. But once it gets to the county jail, they have policies in place, and we would defer to them on how that happens.
Other questions?
Yes, I've got one. Mayor, thank you for coming on. If a teenager wants to have a sex change operation, does this ordinance address that as to whether they need to have parental approval? And then following up to that, does this address who pays for these type of operations?
Let me start with the latter. There's a specific exclusion in this ordinance. It has no impact on any employer provided health insurance. It doesn't, if you're an employer and you have an employee in the city of Mesa and your business is in the city of Mesa and they want to go through, a surgical or other procedures, this ordinance does not have any impact on employer provided or other health insurances. Also, no, this ordinance does not attempt to resolve the very complicated, questions of human sexuality. It's far more modest than that. We are trying to avoid confrontations. We're trying to mediate problems. We're trying to de-escalate situations. So this ordinance would have no impact on parents working with a child on their sexual identity. None at all.
I have a question, Mayor Giles.
Yes.
I've been approached by someone carrying a petition. And what their explanation was to me is that if they are cited as a violation, or if the person who feels like they didn't honor the ordinance of the city and they filed a complaint, would this business owner have to pay for defense costs if it goes to court? In other words, they basically told me that it could cause a very litigious problem for the business owner or individual, and they would have to pay a fine or bear the court cost.
Right. This again, the city would go through contortions to do whatever it could to avoid issuing a citation by trying to be involved in mediation and peacemaking and education. But yes, if there was some belligerence involved and we couldn't be resolved short of a hearing, this would be just like any other civil citation. I'll compare it to your weeds are too high in your front yard. Now, you have to go through a risk analysis. You want to hire an attorney if the worst thing that could happen to you is you get a $350 fine, and it's a non-criminal violation. Probably not. particularly when, you know, the city staff people that are working with you are keep saying to you, let's not have a hearing over this. Let's just talk about the situation and let's talk about how it can be handled better next time, or help you, you know, come to a peaceful resolution with the person who took offense with your behavior. They're going to do everything they can to avoid a hearing. But is it possible that you know, we got two sides that decide they want to have their day in court? And yes, absolutely, they could retain counsel and there could be legal fees associated with that. But I think the legal fees would be certainly more than what's at risk in terms of the civil sanction.
Other questions?
Mayor, this is Craig Henry.
Hi, Craig.
And I, 1995, where we bought a business and we inherited all the employees. And one of them, depending on what day it was either Otto or Janice. And so for a time, we had to find out how to accommodate that. And really, it comes down to people have to have the conversation of what's going to make them comfortable in that situation, not just the person, but all the people surrounding them. So we decided to build a third bathroom, which was, you know, OJ's, Otto's, Janice's bathroom, so that there was never an issue. But that took 3 or 4 months with permitting and finding the space and coming up with the money to do that. So we came out with like a light on the door, you know, or a sign, you know, that it was in use. And so, you know, people respected that and allowed it. And I hope that when you say city employees will be sitting down with businesses, there's going to be a lot of people uncomfortable with this. But I think if the goal is to find a way to accommodate both sides, not just one side, this will still be uncomfortable, but it will be less rancorous. And the rest of what everybody feels about it is never going to be solved. It's like mask or no mask, vaccine or no vaccine. You're just not going to win. So good luck.
Craig, I appreciate you saying that, because I've heard stories identical to yours several times, you know, during the last 30 days. If I talk to a business owner and they have a workforce of more than a few people, you know, they quite often have firsthand experience with dealing with transgender employees. This is a common situation. Yeah. And so that, in my mind, that helps explain why this ordinance is necessary. You know, we need to have policies in place so that we can resolve conflicts and avoid conflicts and have, again, we're not trying to get to the underlying, you know, we're not trying to change or force, you know, feelings on resolving complex, you know, human sexual questions. We're just trying to figure out how do we live with each other and work with each other, and, you know, and do it in a peaceful way. And I think this ordinance helps do that.
Yeah, I think so.
Thank you.
Other question? Not hearing one. I would conclude by saying thank you, Mayor, very much for coming here today. I know I have learned a great deal about the ordinance and how it applies to our city. And I thank you for that, because I think education is the most important thing when it comes to sensitive issues. So we look forward to you returning someday again. We always invite you to be a part of our group. If no one has any other questions, I'll turn this back over to our president, Ben.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Mayor Giles. You know, we understand these are difficult topics, and we're pleased that you joined us today to inform us, give us some more insight than we had, at least in my case, when I started the meeting. So thank you very much. And I heard you mention something that made me think of peaceful coexistence. And I understand that's the theme, I think, of what you're describing. On behalf of our Rotary Club, Mayor Giles, we want to present you with the Service Above Self Rotary coin. We share this on occasion with our community leaders and great speakers that have priorities that resonate with what we do here in Rotary. The four-way test is our way of checking to see where we stand before we take action, and asks 4 questions. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? And finally, will it be beneficial to all concerned? So Mayor, I'm going to drop this Rotary coin off with you. And on behalf of our entire club, thank you for being here today. As we move forward, I just want to tell everyone about what is next. So today was our 45th meeting virtually, and it's again 100 years of service in Mesa. Next week is going to be a Rotarian's Adventure, and it's a start to finish, source to see story about one Rotarian. His name is Eric Elsey, and he's pretty excited about sharing his experience with us. He spent, I believe, 90 days on the Mississippi in a canoe. Following that, on April 14th, Ronald McDonald House, and that's an interesting story. Ronald McDonald House is a 4-star charity, just as is Rotary International. They do things the right way and the proper way, adhering to that 4-way test. Later in April, Circle the City, Leslie Lindquist. There'll be more to explain when we get a little closer, but that'll be interesting as well. Hey, today was a great meeting. Thank you for the mayor for being here. Let's go all out, and it is almost 1 o'clock. Let's go forward and make this day outstanding. Look forward to seeing you all next week.